Good morning and welcome to this special episode of the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. My name is Julian Palacios and I'm the host for this special episode. We are here with Jim Young from Realcomm, and we're going to learn more about this fantastic organization, an upcoming event they're hosting, and where they are contributing to growing our industry workforce. So let's kick it right off. Jim, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you.
Great to be here, Julian. Exciting to have a conversation about something we've been thinking about for about 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why don't we start with introducing you to the audience, and after that, maybe talk about your organization and introduce the organization to the audience, especially to those folks in our audience who might not currently really know the ins and outs of Realcom.
Okay. So, a little bit about me for some context. I originally came from the general IT industry. So, I was selling, I'll date myself a little bit, big mini computers to Fortune 200 companies, Fortune 250 companies. So, I was cut my teeth on big CPUs, pretty complex networking, thousands of terminals, multiple CPUs across a wide area network. And then I was also there for the transformation from mini computing to distributed PCs, where it went from proprietary to open, integrated, interoperable, and that actually has some connection to the story in the building automation industry as well. So in that particular period of my career, I learned about technological paradigm shifts. So about 25, probably 30 years ago now, I decided, I like technology, but I wanted to be in the real estate industry, always had. So I made the shift over to the real estate industry. I was going to be a developer and do all sorts of fun stuff. But lo and behold, my technology roots came back and pulled me back in. And what I ended up doing was combining this pretty sophisticated technology background with the ins and outs of the real estate industry and buildings. And so when I tell people, why did you make that shift? And said, well, when I walked into a building and looked at the ceiling and I saw lights and I saw, access controls on the doors and I saw fire extinguishers on the wall, I saw IP addresses. So I came to the industry with a pretty fresh perspective. It was not the traditional closed proprietary, building automation companies. It was an open integrated IP centric approach. And that's pretty much what Realcomm and IBCon has been, driving for the last 25 years.
That's fantastic. So we were talking before we launched about our audience and who's in our audience. When should folks in the building space, whether it's facility engineers or facility leaders, controls technicians at system integrator offices or OEMs or other organizations like that in our space, when should they engage or with your
Well, let's
organization? What should they keep in mind when to connect?
yeah, let's go to that first draw illustration of the three bubbles. So we came up with this illustration. God, it feels like it says 2018. It feels earlier than this, but we came up with this to try to make it simple for everybody in the ecosystem. Whether you're the person in the room installing the equipment, you're designing the network and in this complex building automation system, whether you're an owner paying for it, whether you're the service provider that's going to run the building after all this stuff is installed. We came up with this one to clearly understand where somebody is in their journey. So if you have a buildings
Hmm.
control person who's used to going into a building and installing one system, one HVAC system, one thermostat, that to us is what we would consider the past. That's building automation, right? That's 30 years ago.
Hey,
Proprietary, closed,
Jim, let,
one building. Yeah.
Jim, let me pause you real quick, just for the audience that's audio only that won't see this. If you can picture in your mind three bubbles that overlap like a Venn diagram, they are past, present, and future, and that is what Jim is talking through right now.
Exactly. So the first bubble of the Venn is past. And
Hmm.
again, it's proprietary, closed, one building, one system, one vendor. You go into a building, you got 10 runs of cable, you got 10 different systems. They never talk to each other. They cool the air, open the doors, and turn on the lights. Okay. Going back to the last 15, 20 years, the center circle, what I call the present, and actually we're moving a little bit more from present into future, open, integrated, interoperable, IP centric, multiple buildings, multiple systems, multiple vendors. Think about what Tritium's goal was 20 years ago, to be able to aggregate all these disparate systems into some level of integration, right? And then the last circle to the far right, future, what we call buildings Internet of Things. That's obviously going over the network, the internet, smart edge devices, using cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and autonomous. Now you got to remember, we came up with this diagram 7 years ago, and we got things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and autonomous in our diagram, right? So that's
Hmm.
how far we're thinking ahead. So to answer your question specifically, um, somebody who's in the building automation, open integrated future buildings world, they need to jump in yesterday, okay? Because it inevitably, your system is going to be part of a larger system that is going to share data, share controls. For example, fire alarms go off, building, doors have to open. Nobody's in the building, lights need to go off. So we're seeing more and more of multiple systems, potentially up to hundreds of them in a building, need to communicate with each other, share data, and share control. So really, we've been on this for about at least 15, some people could argue 20 years. And we've got a specific event for our integrators, who take a more IT centric approach to a smart building.
That's fantastic. Before we jump into talking about that event, I do want to ask a question that just hit me while I was listening to you. You guys are bringing a ton of thought leadership to the industry, to the space. Where are you, where are you doing your own learning and education, or who are you engaging with in the industry to kind of shape what you guys put out there for us to learn from?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Because I came from general tech, I was dealing with the technology that goes in, like I said, the Fortune 250, all the way even down to the Fortune 50 or even the Fortune 10. So those people are typically, other than the federal government or the Department of Defense, they're typically, and I say typically because nothing's ever 100%, the ones who drive the innovation in technology. So, for example, I always followed the banking sector. And you say, why would you follow the banking sector? Well, think about it. 20 years ago, they took all these disparate systems, wholesale trading systems, retail systems, multiple different data sources, and integrated into these little platforms we all use on Saturday mornings called E-Trade, or any of the other multitude of trading platforms that we have our stock portfolios on. So I looked at that industry. I said, wow, you guys have got your data standards established. You've got multiple disparate systems talking to each other. So that was always my lead. And I said, if I could ever get to the point where our asset class, buildings, is on par technologically with the finance industry, my job is done. Well, guess what? 25 years later, we're not even close. Okay. So that's one of the places. The other place we look is, we follow, again, general tech. We used to go to an event called Comdex, which was the big IT event that closed
Mhm.
down. Now we keep our eyes on things like Consumer Electronics Show, and other main technology events. For example, we started learning about AI probably about 7 years ago. I think we introduced it at Realcomm in 2018 on our general session stage. So that's what 7 year or 2018, 5 years ago. Might even been earlier. And just our digging around general tech, what was the big companies doing, what was Amazon thinking about. And so we actually started the conversation. Here it is, 2023, ChatGPT comes along, and now everybody's talking about it.
Mhm.
So we make it our job to look under rocks and look for things. Now, what are we seeing now that your industry may not be paying 100% attention to, or our industry may not be paying 100% attention to, is 5G wireless. Okay, not just 5G, but CBRS, private networks. There is a growing group of people in our industry that believe it is going to be a wireless network with of course some hardwire cable that will become the highway system of that building, not just for phone and data on mobile devices, but also for building automation systems. So we've got a number of organizations who are playing around with these new generation of IoT building automation devices, which come with radios. Think of Qualcomm. Qualcomm's been in and out of this space for probably 7 years. They got little radios that talk to towers or little CBRS radios or antennas. So think about building automation devices coming from the factory with CBRS private network radios built into them. We're no longer plugging devices into proprietary cabling systems or even using Wi-Fi. We're using a new wireless, a set of protocols. So that's just one example. Another one we're kind of keeping an eye on, which is kind of far out there, quantum computing. That's probably 5, 7 years down the road. AI is here, where, as I just mentioned, you're going to see machine learning applied to every aspect of building automation. But to your earlier question, tying two questions together, these folks who are in a building installing one system, all of these things, these new technologies are coming about 1,000,000 miles an hour, and if you don't keep up with them, you could find yourself and your skill set obsoleted. And it's not like this will happen overnight, but sitting on the sidelines and not trying to keep up with some of the stuff is not going to have a good ending, in my opinion.
No, thanks for sharing. And it's you're hitting on one of my biggest fears is, entering the mid to later portion of my career and becoming obsolete as a professional because I didn't keep up. So
Yeah,
thanks for having a resource to sharpen the saw.
no, my
Um,
pleasure.
so moving forward a little bit in the convo, you'd alluded to an event. I think that event is IBCon.
Yep.
Share with the audience, share with us what's the event all about? What are the themes for this year? For those of us in the industry, why should we attend? And I'm excited to attend myself. I'm already signed up, but I'd love to get your perspective to our audience here.
Yeah, and we have a thing called Realcomm Live, which is our weekly podcast. But at the conference, we actually set up a studio, right? So if I don't know if you want to do a podcast, using the studio before we start ours, you're welcome to do that.
Oh,
So
thank you.
a brief history on Realcomm. I'm in the general tech space, move into the real estate industry, get pulled back into the technology space. And in about 30 years ago, I decided to start a technology consulting company, right, for the real estate industry because there weren't a lot of them. And that quickly led to, oh, wait a minute, there's no events talking about technology in the real estate industry. And in 1999, we had our inaugural event. 800 people showed up. We were floored. We had no idea. Little did we know we were in the middle of the dot-com bubble, which was about to collapse. It went from 800 to 2,100 to 2,500 by 2001. We were like, we're the smartest guys on the block. And then it collapsed, and we said, oh, dot-com was a lot more painful than we all had expected. So it's about the organization is 25 years old. And the mission statement has not changed one iota. 25 years is to bring multiple groups, different parts of the ecosystem that deals in the real estate industry. So the owners, the operators, the tenants, the service providers, the MEPs, the integrators, the manufacturers, get them all into one room. Don't let them go to separate conferences, because by the time they go to their conferences and then come back and talk to their ideas, it takes years. So our idea was get all the vegetables, if you will, on the table to make the soup. We'll make the soup a lot faster. And so the idea was get these people in the room, bring in these new advanced ideas, IP, IT technologies applied to the built environment, and then let the chaos happen. Let all these relationships happen, and it's worked to some extent. It hasn't happened quite as fast as I had wanted it to, but nonetheless, it has. So our topics range from everything from what system do you use to manage all your tenants in the building? In other words, your property management systems, all the way to the building automation side. And we knew long ago that these enterprise platforms were going to talk to the buildings. An example would be a new tenant comes in, you get them all set up on your accounting system because you got to bill them monthly for their lease. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you had a new additional field in that accounting system that says, what name would you like on the directory in the lobby? You're saying, what? It's like, well, that's just another piece of information about the tenant. And as soon as you hit submit, you know, putting that new client profile into your enterprise accounting and lease management system, their name shows up on the digital directory in the building. No little
Mhm.
plastic letters, no little felt, signs, none of the things we've seen over the years. It's a digitally connected building to the enterprise. So again, going back, in 1999, a big year for us was 2002, where we wrote an article called "Connecting Buildings and Processes to the Internet." That was our four-way into the smart building, next generation conversation. 2004, we started taking people around the world to take tours in Asia, Tokyo, Seoul, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Kuala Lumpur. Then we went to Europe. Then we went to the Middle East, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, always chasing the most innovative smart buildings we could find. And then bringing that information back to our conference and showing people, and then hoping people would grab onto those ideas and run. We've got this year's event. Well, we're shooting for probably about 2,000 plus people, all from all over the world. We will have best practice case study showcase showing 35 of the most intelligent buildings in the world. We will have an exhibit floor with about 175 vendors, small, medium, and large startups, all the way through industry giants. We've got a power over Ethernet pavilion. We've got a cyber pavilion. We've got a um, ESG pavilion. We've got a wireless pavilion. So all of these technologies that are appropriate for a smart building are aggregated in pavilions. As I mentioned, we've got Realcomm Live. We'll be doing live streaming interviews for 2 days. It's almost too much. And by the way, I think I saw an email from you. We also have a golf tournament on Monday. So this thing starts on Monday. Tuesday pre-con, Wednesday general session, Thursday general session. Close the conference by about 2 o'clock on Thursday. So it's 4 days nonstop,
Yeah, jam-packed. You might
jam
not be
packed.
able to get me off the golf course if I heard it's a nice course. I might hang out for a bit.
Yeah, well, it's I think our 8th year, and I think we sold out this year. It just keeps growing. I think we had like 76 players last year, and I think we're at 80 now, and they're trying to work with the course to get some more folks in. So we'll make sure that happens for you.
Yeah, so location's Las Vegas, right?
Las Vegas,
Um,
Caesar's Palace.
yep, the exact dates are June remind me, it's
12th
the
is
12th?
golf. 13th is pre-con. Day one is 14th, and 15th is the close. Last day.
Alright, fantastic, and sounds like there's plenty of reasons for our audience to attend if they can make it this
Yeah,
year.
and what I would recommend your audience do before you register or even come is, and I know people just are all so busy, but you got to go up to the website and you
Mhm,
got to study what's going on, right? Who are the 175 vendors? What are the 10 that I absolutely want to see? I mean, you go up there, click on their booth, learn about them way before you get to the conference. So just to walk into that exhibit hall and kind of randomly walk, you're not going to accomplish what you're looking for. Do you have interest in 5G as it relates to smart buildings? Maybe you should spend some time in the 5G, in building wireless pavilion.
mhm,
What's this low voltage thing? You really tell me we're bringing low voltage to buildings? Yes, we are. Maybe I'm going to go spend a half hour in that pavilion. Then the program, non-stop sessions. Okay, so don't just get there and look at the program. Look at the program ahead of time. And what I tell everybody is come early, stay late, study the conference, attack it, and you'll walk away with more information. And then the last thing is don't come by yourself. It'll be too much. Come with a team. Most organizations now send 2, 3 people because they divide and conquer, and then they kind of
mhm.
debrief at the end and go back to the organization and update the organization. I mean, things are moving very quick. You have to take a really proactive, offensive approach to getting smart these days.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about the networking, because as you mentioned earlier, just you're bringing people in from all these different parts of the industry to
Yep.
see kind of what chaos can ensue, putting
Yep.
everyone in the room. I'm really excited to have conversations with people
Yeah.
from pretty much all walks of life
Yeah.
in the industry.
Well, Walmart, building a new campus. What are they thinking
Mhm,
about? Some of the biggest office owners in New York City, and all the big tech companies from Silicon Valley. They'll be in the room, right? And usually those bigger companies are taking the lead. And doing some, not always. Sometimes the smaller companies are actually leading, but at scale, these big companies are trying to move the mountain, right, and get these buildings smarter and more efficient and more engaging and interactive.
Absolutely. Well, so I want to pivot a little bit to something that's part of the conference, kind of an underlying theme or one of the many themes you have going on that we've been privileged to talk to you about a little bit, which is workforce development. What are you hearing from the folks you talk to, building owner operators or others, about just this big macro topic of workforce?
So we've been on this topic. In fact, I was looking through some old pictures and videos in preparation for our 25th celebration. So I was just kind of, looking through some of the slides and from 10, 15 years back. And I got to tell you, we were onto this problem easily 10, maybe even 15 years ago. Okay. We looked at the demographics, we looked at math and science skills in K through 12 or 6 through 12. We looked at engineering enrollment in universities, and we knew the buildings were going to get more complicated, and nobody was thinking about our industry and the underlying factor of lower math and science skills and teaching people about science, which a smart building is. It was going in the wrong direction. So we started yelling easily 10 years ago. And we came up with all sort. We worked with various organizations to try to solve the problem. One was working with all the junior colleges in the state of California. Let's get a building automation program in there. I begged major universities who are part of our community. I won't name their names. Let's get your IT education groups and talking to your building. And how about a new curriculum to teach smart buildings? Have had minimal success. So this year we stumbled upon an organization that I think Lisa, one of my partners, met at ASHRAE, called Stacks and Jewels. And she came
Hmm.
back all excited and said, "Jim, you got to meet these guys. You got to meet these guys." And she kind of explained what they're doing. We were on the phone within, I think 24 hours of them getting back from ASHRAE, and I was hooked immediately. I said, "You guys are brilliant. There's so much talent out there that's not utilized because nobody's paying attention. So many of these kids are smart; they just don't have the opportunities, And they take kids, and as kids, people of all ages, who may not have the same economic opportunities or social opportunities that some of us have, and then they teach them coding, and they teach them how to make lights turn on and off, and all of a sudden they're finding themselves as building engineers in some of the best buildings in the country. And I'm saying I'm in. So we started. We said we're going to adopt you for this year. We had a fundraising event to get about 9 or 10 of them to the conference. So the kids are going to be there. My goal is to get them all jobs before they leave. They're going to be on stages talking to people. The golf tournament is actually we turned it into a charity event. So proceeds from that are going to go to Stacks and Jewels. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone. We're going to give people opportunities who deserve them, and we're going to fill a huge void in that we don't have enough smart people, willing to tackle these smart buildings. And if we don't, it's going to slow down the adoption of smart buildings, because why would you spend all the time, money, and effort on putting these technologies in a building if you have nobody to operate it once it's done?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all of that is fantastic. Um, you clearly have your finger on the pulse of different parts of the industry and what people are thinking. So, with respect to this topic and workforce, when you talk to some of the building owners you talk to, either large real estate organizations, large institutions with big campuses, et cetera, how are these challenges that you describe affecting them today?
So the real estate industry, not on the building technology side, but more on the IT side, has
Hmm.
always struggled with the fact that, when a kid graduates out of an MIT or a Stanford, they don't think of, oh, I'm going to go work in the building industry as their first choice. They think, I'm going to a tech company, I'm going to a startup. So right off the bat, our industry has, we're probably 10th on the rung, on the ladder as far as industries that people would even consider. Despite the fact that we're a multi-trillion dollar industry, nobody gets away with not, spending a lot of time in a building. A lot of folks don't recognize that we're an industry with great opportunities. So we struggle, first of all, getting people to pay attention to the built environment as a career. The second
Hmm.
point I just made was, from the technology standpoint, we have to stand in line, with higher salaries, higher benefit packages from a lot of other industries. And so what we're finding is, one engineer has to run three buildings. or that project that they want to do for the new access control system, or upgrading their HVAC, or putting in those low voltage LED lights. They sit there and go, it's great. We can see the cost savings and everything. But like I said earlier, how are we going to support it? So we're playing a little bit of offense and a little bit of defense, but we are not winning the game at this point. I mean, we
Mhm.
absolutely have a shortage of capable folks to run these buildings that are getting more and more sophisticated. And unless we come up with scalable, large programs, I think the problem's only going to get worse.
And when you think about the problem getting worse, what are the implications and consequences of that? Whether it's for a building owner operator, for a systems integrator, a manufacturer, or one of these software type organizations in our space, what's it going to do to us?
Well, buildings become less safe because you can't put the new, best equipment in. Buildings become less environmentally sound. ESG, all those governance, programs and goals and objectives for making buildings more energy efficient and sustainable. Those go away because you don't have people to run the building. um, Everybody's saying, what's it going to take to get me on that, into that building, that 2 hour commute? These buildings need to be more engaging. They need to be more interactive. They need to be more immersive. And if you don't have that, then what that means is those projects are going to go by the wayside because they don't have people to support those technologies. So if we don't get a workforce up to speed with these emerging new technologies to support this next generation of buildings, then the investment is just going to slow down. And it's like anytime you see a neighborhood that starts to get blighted, the buildings go unpainted, the lawns go uncut, you start to
Mhm.
notice things aren't looking as sharp. And that's my fear, is that if there's a number of things that could slow innovation down. Number one, the ability to pay for all this stuff. Number two, the desire and vision. But number three, the ability to support it. So we need a workforce ready, willing, and able to support this new generation of buildings. Otherwise, it's just going to slow to a pace that none of us are going to like.
No, I agree with you. You said something earlier about our industry being 10th on the list. So I'm curious from your perspective, what do we need to do as leaders in our industry to move up the list? How do we make the building space, the built environment more attractive to either the younger generations coming up or to people in other industries who we want to try and potentially attract to ours?
Well, first thing we need to do is advertise. We don't really, there's no body out there talking about the built environment and technology as this career opportunity. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, I come out of a top tier, tech school. I'm either in finance, I'm going into tech, I'm going into legal tech, I'm going into med tech. There's all these other industries that do a pretty good job of advertising. We need to get better at that. Two, we got to raise our salaries. We got to raise our comp packages to be a little bit more competitive. I mean, when you come out of school, top of your class, you follow the money, right? And following the money means you probably first go to tech or finance, and then if that doesn't work out, you start going down the ladder. So, advertisement of what our industry represents, and then making more of an investment towards the technical operations of these buildings, and i.e. salaries, I think would help us get a little bit more attention paid.
No, that's great. So we're coming up near the end of the episode here. I do want to give you an opportunity to either talk more about IvyCon or your organization, kind of last message to the audience. What do you want to share with the group?
Yeah. Um, I was listening to a story or a podcast about a comparison between electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and a building. And they said, in an autonomous vehicle environment, there's, 6, 8 systems that have to function in order for that car to drive down the road. In a building, there's hundreds, if not thousands. Okay. And so all the attention is being paid on the sustainability conversation to automobiles. Well, they only represent 21, 22% of the energy spend of the United States. So you say, well, okay, who's the biggest offender when it comes to wasting energy? And the answer is buildings. So even if we don't look at anything else other than buildings from the ESG standpoint, there's a big problem to be solved. Okay. So you're not going to take a big, dumb building that's built 30 years ago and make it efficient, energy efficient, and operationally efficient without technology. Okay. So the path going forward, immersive, engaging spaces, energy efficient, operationally efficient, can't get to any of those finish lines without technology. So everybody in your audience, you got a job. There's no doubt, But if you're only content with hooking that thermostat up to the HVAC system in the back room, one system, one vendor, you're not interested in IP systems, IT systems, integration with other systems, artificial intelligence, machine learning, eventually your skills, as I said earlier, are going to become obsolete. So I would just say lean into your career. What does that mean? More interesting, more fun, bigger challenges. You just feel better, from an accomplishment standpoint. Oh, and P.S., you're probably going to make a boatload more money because the more skills that you obtain, the more you're needed. You go up that ladder, and all of a sudden, you're running 10 buildings from your phone. When a light goes out in New York or a fan stops working in San Francisco, you bring these innovative ideas to your team and you save money and you make the buildings better. Your career's only going through the roof. Install that thermostat or take control of a smart building. The opportunities are endless. And that's exactly what we talk about for 3.5 days at our conference. And everybody who needs to, be there is there. Like I said, all the ecosystem from the manufacturer to the end user to the tenant, we're all in one room trying to figure this stuff out. And final thought is come early, stay late, study the program, and attack the conference. And if you're not happy, money back guarantee. We will refund your money.
Jim, thank you so much. Thanks for making the time to be on the podcast with us. I'm really excited about attending the event. And thank you for leading an organization that is providing some thought leadership and some education for us. Those of us in the industry who want to keep sharpening the saw and growing our skill set and our knowledge base. So thank you for all of that.
And thanks for having me. And anytime we can ever do anything for you guys, love what you're doing. Such a critical, important part of this whole puzzle, as we just talked about. And looking forward to seeing you as well and introducing you to the chaos.
Oh, that'll be great. I look forward to it. All right, folks. I do want you to stay tuned. Later today, this afternoon, David Perkins from the SBA team is going to be hosting episode 428 of the Smart Buildings Academy podcast, titled BACnet MSTP Explained: Its Influence and Importance in the Building Automation Space. Also, don't forget we have our Building Operations Management course that just launched. The early access program for that course will run until the first 100 seats are filled. Early access gets you a 40% discount, access to the course content ahead of everybody else in the marketplace, and the ability to provide feedback and shape some of that course content so that the final version is the best version of a operations management course out there in the marketplace. So go to our website, check out early access for the new building operations management course. And lastly, folks, don't forget we have our Memorial Day sale. Starts on Friday, goes through Monday. Be sure to check that out. Memorial Day sale is discounts on individual course purchases, certificate path purchases. And for the first time ever, we are going to offer a discount on our workforce development program, which we just announced 5 new cohort start dates beginning in August. It's about 1 a month. So if you're looking to grow your team, expand your labor force, and do so at speed and at profit, come check us out and work with us to help do that. So thank you all for attending and listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.